Elections Committee. We have a quorum, so let's get rolling. First up is Resolution RS 2019-138 Murphy honors the life of Bill Whitson. Have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. And this actually, just to let you all know, we're going to pull it from consent to talk about it on the floor and ask that everyone voting in the affirmative tonight sign on to the bill. With that, I ask for approval. Thank you, Dave.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution RS, let's roll that one to the heel, and if somebody could alert Syracuse, I'd appreciate it.
I don't think he's here yet. He is. He just got here.
Resolution RS 2019-140, Van Reese, Johnston, and others, recognizes the Tennessee Women's Suffrage Monument Board in their efforts to create the Tennessee Woman Suffrage Monument.
Move to approve. Second.
Any discussion?
Just quick synopsis. This is number 3 in our series of resolutions in conjunction with the Women's Caucus of the Metro Council and the Mayor's Council on Women for the anniversary of the women's suffrage vote in August. And so you'll see me at the second meeting of every council meeting from now until August. But this is number 3. We're very proud of it. As if you've probably already seen the monument, it's going to have its new home and its new location, and this resolution will be part of that program, so I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. RS 2019-139, Syracuse honors Big Brothers Big Sisters of Middle Tennessee for 50 years of service to Nashville. I'm sorry, Councilman, I didn't see there was a letter in here. Is there a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Late items, late filed resolution.
Yes.
Okay. Late filed resolution approving an amendment to an extension of a contract between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County and Waste Industries of Tennessee to provide solid waste collection services for the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. And Councilmember, we are supposed to ask you why there is an emergency, whether the legislation could have been timely filed, and whether the matter can wait till the next council meeting.
Okay, I will, for most of those questions, defer to staff. I was contacted about this at the end of yesterday, and that was, so I was not aware of it until then. This contract expires December 31st. This represents, I think, about 10% of our trash collection, and Ms. Wallstrom and Ms. Costonis on staff here can speak to why this transpired.
Okay. And trash will pile up if we don't.
Literally.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good deal.
Ms. Wallstrom, do you want to speak to why?
What were your questions again, the first?
Why there is an or why, I guess
Why wasn't it
we
timely
kind
filed?
of why it wasn't timely filed.
That was maybe more my department. Ultimately, there were a couple other delays along the way, but it was a combination of things. We had a staff member who was out for a personal emergency, and also there was some confusion between this contract and the waste management contract, which was being held for further negotiations. And so it may be also that things that one was supposed to be held, this one was not, and so there may have been some crossed wires.
Okay, thank you.
So start with waste, so.
Yes, I'm confused.
Can it wait till next council meeting?
Anybody have any concerns?
Not because of
I
the
don't
trash
think we should
pile.
have
That was the
concerns.
question that they asked.
Okay, the contract expires
still there.
December 31st, so the next council meeting is not till January 6th, which would mean that we would have a lapse in service.
We have a lot of trash.
Next, thank you. Next late file, a resolution honoring, extending the House Incentive Pilot Program in accordance with Section 2.213.10 of the Metro Code.
I'm on that bill. I could speak to that. So HIP is a pilot program. That's the first P in HIP that basically if a property holder voluntarily signs an agreement with Metro that enables an existing housing unit or units to essentially move into workforce housing and instead of market rate housing. And they sign a deal with Metro, and Metro kind of makes that deal whole. It's a pilot program we passed several years ago. The reason it was not timely filed is that nobody really knew it was expiring December 31st until one of the recipients contacted myself and a couple other council members and said, hey, are we extending this pilot program? So, Councilman O'Connell filed a late file, several of us signed on. I might turn to legal counsel to see if there's anything I left out in my explanation.
So it applies not only to the conversion of existing, but also to new construction. So if you build new units, you can be eligible for the grant. So this resolution does not appropriate any additional money or add anything. The existing contracts remain in place. This would just allow new applicants to file for any funds that are remaining.
For existing funds. And I'm aware, I believe, that there are at least 2 council districts that have HIP agreements. So.
Thank you. Any concerns with the late file? And it occurs to me that we all, on this one, we also need to vote on it because we're the only committee that it's being referred
Move for approval.
to.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. All right, we're on to elections and confirmations. Convention Center Authority, the appointment of Mr. Robert Davidson for a term expiring September 30th, 2023, appointment of Mr. Barrett Hobbs for a term expiring September 30th, 2023, and the reappointment of Ms. Vonda McDaniel for a term expiring September 30th, 2023. Can y'all bring some chairs?
Rotate a hot seat around.
Please.
Karen, you want to bump down and we could give them
Thanks,
that?
y'all.
Or, that works too.
You only need 2.
Yeah, we only need 2.
Musical chairs, Sharon, musical chairs.
How are you doing?
Oh, you take that way. Yes, ma'am.
Budweiser hot seat, right?
Yes, it is.
Lightning round.
Well, would y'all mind introducing yourselves and talking about why you want to be on this authority or continue on it?
Sure. I'll start. My name is Vonda McDaniel. Thank you. I have served on the MCC since it was built pre-construction. I'm really proud of the fact, being a native Nashvilleian, that it now generates $1 million for every day that it's been open. Being a part of that in terms of direct economic impact. And so I really want to be a part of making sure that it continues to thrive. And so that's why I want to serve.
Thank you.
Hard to follow. I'd rather Barrett go first.
No, you go, man.
I'm Robert Davidson, and I must confess I grew up in Shelbyville, so I'm John and Jim Cooper's lifelong friend, but I was Jim Cooper's treasurer for many years, the congressman, and worked in John's campaign. Ironically, I'm a CPA and was the CPA for the Convention Center construction. So our firm handled the joint venture of Clark and Bell, and we did the audit of the construction process. So I at least know about the construction cost and that part of it. But I'm a lifelong Tennessean, lived in Wilson County until 4 years ago. My wife and I retired, and we live on Natchez Trace in Mr. Cash's district, I believe. So I don't know if he's here. But, and just want to give back to the community. And I asked John if he had a committee come up, count on me. And the garbage committee, if it had come up earlier, I would have gotten that one probably. I'm honored. What a nice facility we have. I've been to many conventions there, but I'm ignorant about the economic impact this time, but I'd like to serve.
Thank you. Councilman Roden, do you have something to add?
He always does.
Y'all really gonna you really gonna put him on a board?
And I do not know Barrett Hobbs.
You can bump him, Councilman, if you so choose.
Vonda's my good friend, but I don't know who Barrett Hobbs
Yeah,
is.
see, they're all distant. Roten comes in the room and everybody distances themselves.
Everything falls apart.
Right.
Mr. Hobbs.
My name's Barrett Hobbs. I'm a lifelong Nashvilleian. My family started in the tourism industry in 1961. I started my first business in the shadows of Opryland in 1996. So I don't know anything but tourism and hospitality and trying to generate taxes for the city and play my part, whatever part that might be. So when the mayor asked me if I would serve, I said, sure, be happy to. There's not another better example, I guess, of tourism and hospitality that we have, right now other than the convention center. So with your approval, I'll be happy to continue on what's already been done.
Thank you. Questions?
So I thank you very much for allowing me to be here and ask questions because I'm not on the committee. But I do know that Ms. McDaniel has been a very strong advocate for minority contracting when it comes to Music City Center. We had a workforce development program during that construction time, and I was thankful for the things that they were able to do for the community. And I just wanted to know if you all were willing to continue to make sure that that kind of impact and spreading that wealth with that community on the inside of the tourism as you were on the outside of building it.
100%. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that as the city thrives, it's very important to make sure that we are making sure that everyone has a pathway to prosperity, and that workforce development program definitely helped to do that. So, absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. I had several friends that actually participated through that program. So, as Nashville grows, a lot of the small businesses, which are minority,
Right.
a lot of times sometimes get left behind. So I think it's very important.
I think we all heard over the past year, especially the summer in the campaign, and a lot of rhetoric about the convention center, about money going to the convention center, not being in the neighborhoods, things like that. And I know that there has been efforts on the convention center's part and things to combat that. But what else do you think that, as convention center kind of spokespeople that you will be on this committee or on the authority, what can the convention center do to help assure some of our districts and our neighbors in the outlying areas that downtown is not the priority and that it's all of Nashville to move forward?
You're the leader.
But everybody keeps going around. And Vonda can't be the only one. She's been doing this already for a while, y'all.
Can you repeat that? No. Well, I think the word you use, combat, I think one of my goals would be to stop the combat. I don't think that's ever good or productive. I think if you talk to people in Antioch and Bellevue and Hermitage, they don't want combat. There's not a person in the outlying districts that's not proud of Nashville. To turn on the TV and see what goes on here. They're proud to hear the conventions that are here and the tourism, and that's great. But when their own school is lacking, when their own intersection's clogged up, they can't see where that's really converted to them. So the message I got on the transit vote, on the mayoral vote, on the council vote, is don't forget about us. I'm so proud of this. I'm proud of the convention center. But rather than we sacrifice our roads or our schools or our health care and our community for that, isn't it about time it sort of gave back? So I think as a CPA, I would be dedicated to looking at the budget, to looking at things that might be an opportunity to share more with the community, if that's the case. Anyone who planned the convention center, I was around in 08 and 07 when this was being discussed. No one had any idea it would be this successful. Well, what a touchdown. What a raging success. All of the people I knew then who were part of this process, and I was in a meeting here with the mayor, with Carl Dean at the time in 08 and others, and you just had no idea in the depths of the recession that something like this could be this successful. I would think all of them who said if we create this kind of growth and this kind of tax revenue, surely we could maybe reshuffle some things and be able to reallocate some things to give back to the community. So that's what I would try to do.
Is that?
But I would emphasize no more combat. Aren't we kind of all for the same things, I bet?
Council Lady?
Is that beyond just the 10 million?
Yielded.
You know, I'm going to plead ignorance. I don't know anything about the 10 million other than what I've read in the paper, so it would be inappropriate for me to argue with that. As a CPA, I don't ever answer financial questions without data. And I think you'd have to look at the budget and what the law says. And I'm certainly familiar, if you make commitments, you have to honor those commitments and follow the law. So we've got to do that. But I would think if there's available funds, there's not a cap on that. There would be, what could we have that would be available for anything that we need beyond what is required? But I think it's important to realize, I'm going to make this comment, that when you have a surplus one year, it doesn't mean that you raid that surplus for anybody, because we're going to have a recession and conventions are cyclical. So we're going to have some down cycles too, and you want to make sure that the convention center is well funded and solid enough to carry that. But any kind of sound financial opportunity that would give back, I think we need to do that. Sure.
Can I keep going?
We're going to bear it, though.
Vonda, you said that there was still much work to do. What did you mean by that?
So what we learned when we built the first convention center, within a very short period of time, that's a very kind of competitive space. It changes. And so in order to make sure that our convention center remains very competitive in this market, hotel prices have been very high and maybe put us at a bit of a disadvantage in terms of, but now the inventory of hotel space is increasing, and we want to make sure that folks continue to come to Nashville to conventions. It is definitely an economic driver, and we want to keep it that way.
Any other questions or comments? You ready to vote? All three together? Okay. All in.
I don't think we can. One's a reappointment. Because one is a reappointment.
Okay. Then let's start with the first two on the list, Mr. Davidson, Mr. Hobbs.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And Ms. McDaniel.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Yay.
Appreciate y'all. See you next door.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, don't let you down.
She got this. You know what?
Next up is the Hospital Authority, the appointment of Ms. Denise Harris Sadler for a term expiring July 11th, 2024. Ms. Sadler will fill the unexpired term of Dr. Loretta Bond. Ms. Sadler. Hi.
Hello. Hi there. Hello.
Would you be so kind as to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Denise Harris Sadler, and I am a native Nashvilleian, as I've heard everyone else that has sit down here. And I'm here. This is my first experience with a board position, but I am here because I am a healthcare provider, have been one for 42 years. Just recently retired, but I didn't want to retire completely. I wanted to do some things to give back to the community. And I had spoken with Dr. Bond, and she knew that I wanted to serve in some capacity. And so she shared with me what this role was. So I'm here.
Nice. Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments? Councilmember?
I have a question. Ms. Sadler, when I first got here, there was a lot going on with General Hospital. So my question to you is, and I look at that as kind of the people's hospital, talk to me about how you feel about your commitment to General.
Well, I've seen that General has made a lot of progress, number one. And I feel like that institution is needed to be a buffer between the other major hospitals to help those in the community that may need specific caring, those that may not have insurance. We're trying to get those that even have insurance. So we're trying to move and make it an all-encompassed environment for everybody in Nashville to know what General Hospital has to offer.
And I would just throw out there, it's a good hospital, period, because I've been to one of the offices, so. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Councilmember?
This woman, I would put my life in her hands. I would put my children's life in her hands. So when we sit here to talk about confirming her for the hospital authority, it's like making sure that you've got Florence Nightingale on your side. I'm serious.
Wow.
She is that kind of caring and compassionate person. She has great temperament. So in terms of the turmoil and all the other issues that we experienced some years ago with General Hospital, I believe she will be the buffer because she has the kind of temperament and collectedness that it takes to help navigate through those types of waters. So I'm just so happy and so proud to see her here and knowing that her other half is always there standing beside her is a great thing. So I'm just very happy that Nashville General has recommended you for this position.
Thank you.
Wow.
Endorsement.
With that, I would say, I'm sorry, there are other.
Ms. Sadler is actually from my district, and from reading what she had to say, I think she's well qualified, and so I would also like to make a recommendation for us to approve her.
So if that's a motion, I second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. See you
Thank you
next
all.
door.
Oh, my job. Get out. Did you need Ms. Sadler? Ms. Sadler?
Yes.
Did you park anything?
I did. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the Sexually Oriented Business Licensing Board, the reappointment of Mr. Jonathan Richardson for a term expiring October 10th, 2023, and an appointment for Mr. Lauren Joel Russell II for a term expiring October 10th, 2023 as well. Welcome. How are you? Would you all mind introducing yourselves and talking a little bit?
I'm Jonathan Richardson. I am from Nashville. I'm in Council District 1. I'm a lawyer. I practice here and everywhere in the state, it seems. I think this is my second renewal here for the SOB board, and I'm happy to serve. It's a good and interesting board. We have short meetings though. We don't go very fast, so we have short meetings, but we're all friendly.
My name is Lauren Russell. I am also a native Nashvilleian. I work for Middle Tennessee Mental Health Institute as the State Forensic Services Program Director. I've been speaking with him a lot today, figuring out what I am potentially getting myself into. And it sounds really interesting, I say. I didn't even know this board existed. But I was talking to Brenda a few years ago about, I have young kids, an 8 and a 1-year-old, and you can't fuss about what the city's doing without being willing to get involved. So I told her if something comes up, I'm willing to be here, so you're right.
Have the quorum problems been better lately, or are you still having issues getting a quorum for some meetings?
I guess so the rules require us to have in-person meetings. We have them roughly every 2 weeks, or I guess it's the second Wednesday and the fourth Wednesday. So sometimes it's hard to establish a quorum. But I think that we're doing better, I guess.
Okay.
We have, I guess it's important that we have enough folks on the committee to really make sure that we establish a quorum. And but there's no problem with respect to the licenses. I guess the only issue is whether or not they actually get a hearing. I guess if you want to call it that, whether they appear on the docket or not. Our miracle worker, Christine, actually still goes through each of the applicants and makes sure that they're in compliance with the law. So there's no problem that way. And we have a mechanism that they get approved by a matter of law, by the law that's written, that, if we're not able to meet. But they still get looked after. They have to pass their criminal background check, and to pay their fee to register and stuff, so.
Gotcha. Are you both good with the schedule? Y'all are okay with getting to meetings on the second?
Can I ask a follow-up? Do you believe the agenda merits having twice monthly meetings? Is there that much business before the body, or do you feel like it could be condensed schedule-wise?
Well, in order to keep our meetings very quick,
Yeah.
I think that we're fine. I think that the main purpose for having the board is to make sure that the entertainers or the ladies and the establishments are constantly interacting with the city to make sure that there's nothing big and nefarious going on. I mean, I guess that's the main thing, and they're trying to keep this. You're really trying to keep this industry above board and in the sunlight, as opposed to not in the sunlight. And I think that keeping the regular meetings goes a long way. And I think that tinkering with it will also open the city up to new litigation. Our policies are established and they're old and matured. They've survived the test, the First Amendment tests in the courts and stuff like that. They've been replicated in other cities. So I think that it might be dangerous to tinker with the laws, even slightly. So I think that it's fine. If it were up to me, I'd throw in some convenient things, but I mean, I don't know if that'll throw off the balance between actually making sure that everybody kind of interacts with each other, as opposed to in favor of convenience, which might lead to some other unintended consequence. Everybody knows the danger of these I guess strip clubs in the city have a bad history, and entertainers are at risk of sex trafficking, stuff like that, or illegal activity or whatever. So I think it's important that everybody kind of stays involved.
Thank you. That's helpful.
So move.
I've got. So did I hear you correctly say that if there was not a quorum, you still have a mechanism where the applicant still receives their licensure?
Yes. So in order for an applicant to receive their license, they have to apply. They have to fill out their form, and they have to pay. They have to pass the criminal background check. And they have to pay the registration fee.
But if y'all don't have a quorum, they still get their licensure?
Well, they do, yes. What happens is they appear, there's a blind system, I guess. We issue numbers for each of the businesses and the entertainers, and they'll appear on the next docket. And their actual license will be approved by a matter of law, but it'll be really be approved at the next meeting.
What I'm hearing you say, and I would like to, I don't know which committee would be appropriate to discuss this, because I have a friend who was on the board for a number of years. I attended one of the meetings to give a former member, remember?
Seeing you there, yes.
To give him on his retirement.
Right?
It was the years. Giveaway. Very recognizable. Very recognizable.
Didn't know who that, right? Didn't know.
I was on an important thing. But to thank a member who had been on there for many, many years, right? And so I saw firsthand, and I've heard very anecdotally about quorum or getting there late, or the meetings the meetings do seem to be brief, because it is a lot of consent type of things. And so I guess what I am hearing, and I would like to maybe hear from y'all's staff or whatever committee this of better jurisdiction would be, whether it should be moved to, if the applicants are able to get their licensure by a matter of rule or policy, if maybe this board should be similar to our other boards that only meet when there is a complaint or or action needing to be taken in that regard, because I do know that this is a board that we've seen turnover, and it's been quote unquote by previous administrations hard to fill because of quorum and attendance issues, and the meetings being only 5 minutes long at times, but people showing up 30 minutes later, an hour late. People don't want to serve on a board like that. I don't blame them. So I guess if we could get some feedback from y'all, from your staff, or if we need to do a resolution, whatever, I'm at the will of the advice and suggestion of others. I'd like to maybe see this board, it might be time that it needs to turn into something of more of a as-needed board rather than a regular board, if the applicants can receive their licensure by a matter of rule. Does that make sense?
One thing I will say is dealing with other as-needed boards, the one concern that I have, and especially I think you've explained very well sort of the oversight role that y'all are playing, that the training isn't there when boards and committees like this meet on an as-needed basis, and so sometimes they'll meet when it's needed, but then they won't be equipped, quite honestly, to deal with the issues that are at hand.
I'm just concerned, I mean, if y'all are meeting every 2 weeks and the meetings are roughly less than 15 minutes, and we know that there's a quorum and an attendance issue, there's an overarching problem there. But anyway.
Would a move to a monthly meeting not solve that?
Well,
as monthly as opposed to every 2 weeks?
Well, I think as explained, I think there's a fear, like you're saying, of litigation. And,
right. I mean,
and tweaking one thing might make the whole thing unravel.
But that blind system that you just described, though, would still be in place, though, and a monthly meeting.
Yeah, because applicants are receiving their licensure anyway.
Yeah.
I guess maybe this is a matter that I'll write a letter to Metro Legal and ask.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I would, in lieu of of scrapping the regular meeting, I mean, I would maybe, issue maybe some maybe a telephonic capacity or, something like that. I mean,
we have all kinds of issues on open records and open meetings law on that.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know. I mean, I think that part of the strength of the oversight is knowing that it comes up like it's regular. I mean, the folks, I guess the entertainers know that they're required to apply every year, and there's no delay, I guess, to them receiving their license when they do so. So there's a constant, I guess. There's a constant, like I said, oversight. I guess there's a constant meeting of the board and constant inspection of their background and whatnot to make sure that they're.
But those are functions of your staff, right?
Well, the staff is the main thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that like I said, I mean, I think that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's
I guess I would just argue that I've
the
heard
litigation piece. I think that it's important to keep the machine going, and I think it's not too common. I don't know what the actual cost is, but I don't think it's that difficult to continue to meet regularly.
So if you're asking legal for an opinion on it, then I would think that legal would give you an opinion on all of that about the litigation and everything, and that would give us a better picture of it.
And not that we need to micromanage
or not.
Yeah, we don't need to micromanage every board. This is just one that I feel I've heard a lot. This is the only board that I've heard. It's hard to fill. I'm sorry. That it's hard to see in your face. That it's a board that's hard to fill, that there's turnover, that there's attendance. It's the only one that I've kind of heard that consistently about before coming on council and then after. And so I think it would just, maybe we are a jurisdiction, maybe we're not. But
so when we do something like this, then what is the procedure? If we do, because it came here first, and if we do go and ask legal for some information, does that then come back to us as a committee, or what is the procedure on that?
I mean, depending on whether the committee asks for it or an individual can ask Metro Legal and or the board staff to get back to either the individual who can then distribute it to the board, or to get back to the entire committee, or give it to the entire committee. It's really, I think anybody can request information at any time and then make sure that it gets distributed so that we can.
I'm happy to request and share,
that'd be great.
and then maybe we make a recommendation or don't make a recommendation.
it'd be at least good information for everybody to have,
Yeah,
so
because I
everybody
think
knows what footing we're on.
yeah, otherwise we'll just have this conversation whenever you're next.
Probably
when
next
teaser out.
Several of you had questions about it, so I think that would be good to find out for real.
And I think now we've spoken with, will be 4 members of the board in the last month or so hopefully these issues will resolve themselves.
Exactly.
Is it time now?
If there's no other discussion, is there a second to
Second.
Councilmember Lee? All right. Well, I guess we have to do the reappointment and the appointment separately.
Oh, that's right.
So this is, y'all made a motion, the reappointment of Mr. Jonathan Richardson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And the appointment of Mr. Russell.
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right. Thank y'all. See you next month.
Sheriff Parker about it. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, she hasn't given out these parking values.
I pushed them that way.
Well, before,
Delegate them.
we haven't adjourned, have
Mind
we?
your own business.
Yes, we have.
We're adjourned.
Back.